Hey there, quick disclaimer before we jump into the review. Since I'm posting this before the details of this book are widely known to the public, I'll be avoiding traditional spoilers, but I will be saying things like the name of the book, I'll be naming characters, and I will be discussing the plot throughout this video, so proceed at your own risk. Hey everyone, Nick here from AnotherBooktuber channel, and today I'll be reviewing the Frugal Wizard's Handbook for Surviving Medieval England by Sanderson. This is the second of Sanderson's Kickstarter books following Tress of the Emerald Sea. Unlike Tress, Wizard's Handbook does not take place within the Cosmere, and it's more science fiction than fantasy, making it somewhat of an oddity in his bibliography. It's certainly my first exposure to non-Cosmere Sanderson, outside of his Wheel of Time books, so I was very curious if it would meet the standard that I was used to. In the end, I think this secret project maybe should have stayed a secret. Let's get into it. First off, before we get into the plot, let me just go on a mini rant about the title, The Frugal Wizard's Handbook for Surviving Medieval England. It's awful, and I hate it. It's a mouthful, it doesn't have any flow to it, and it's difficult to remember. I kept referring to it as the Frugal Wizard's Guide to like South London or something like that. Like it's like trying to remember the name of a Panic at the Disco song from 2005. Like it can't be done. I think he was trying to evoke shades of The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, but whereas that title has an almost casual rhythm to it with its repetitive H's and G's, Frugal Wizard is clunky and awkward. I'll be referring to it as Wizard's Handbook throughout this review because the word frugal hurts my mouth. Wizard's Handbook takes place in the far future, but despite that and what the title implies, this is not a story about time travel. In this future, traveling between parallel dimensions is not just possible, but it's been commercialized. And there's one company in particular that offers the ability to own your own dimension with an Earth that is the same age as ours, but technologically stunted so as to be similar to medieval England. It's in one of these dimensions that John West finds himself inexplicably dropped one day. Inexplicable mainly because he didn't follow the proper entry procedures, and now he's got a terrible case of amnesia. As he tries to remember who he is and how he ended up here, John joins up with Cephawin, who, because of his futuristic body enhancements, mistakes him for an elf. Cephawin herself is a kind of traveling magician whose protection spells have been faltering lately. When Cephawin's brother is kidnapped, John recognizes the bandit as Ulrich, a mafia leader in his world, and decides to help rescue the boy and take Ulrich down. Wizard's Handbook feels like an incomplete story, or rather one that an author would write early in their career. If this were his first book, I would say Sanderson had promise, but had to work out some major issues of pacing and, believe it or not, world building. But we know Sanderson can create worlds like nobody's business, so it makes this all the more disappointing. Usually when Sanderson throws a bunch of made-up words at you, he gives you enough context so you still have a pretty good idea of what he's talking about, even if you don't have the definition. But I found myself confused more than a couple of times by the terminology he was using in this book, and it pulled me out of the story. Unlike the first secret project, Tress of the Emerald Sea, this 100% feels like a book that someone would write in their spare time, maybe just as a way to get some ideas out, get the creative juices flowing. It's all ideas and no polish. This definitely does not feel up to the standards of an established writer who is known for creating fully realized worlds and strong central characters. John West only ever crosses the baseline of boring when he's being irritating. Since the novel is first-person perspective, which isn't typical for Sanderson, and John has amnesia, we are discovering everything as he does. This plays out pretty much as you expect it to. Character scrambles for any memory they can to try and give themselves context. They form a conclusion about who they must be, And then over time, they realize that they aren't who they thought they were, but they use the amnesia as an opportunity to start over as the person that they originally thought they were. It's not a spoiler if it's how it's been done a million times before. The way you make that cliche amnesia story work is by making the character easy to root for and to empathize with. I never cared for John, and honestly, I couldn't stand how much he whined. It's a plot point in the book that he is a loser. He calls himself a loser all the time, and all I could think about while reading it was, damn, what a loser. We know that Sanderson can write depression because Kaladin from the Stormlight Archive has spent 4,000 pages being depressed, and we all love Kaladin. I wasn't enjoying the journey with John, I wasn't impressed by anything we learned about him, and I didn't feel the appropriate feelings when his story concluded. It was just a total misfire. The world itself and the idea of owning a personal dimension to use as your own playground is a fun concept, and I can see why the idea stood out to Sanderson so much that he needed to write it down. But I also kind of see why he dumped this one out as part of this campaign and not as a standard publication. If Wizard's Handbook had come out without all of this fanfare as just the next Sanderson book, and fans went to the bookstore and scooped up a copy on release day, I think people would be pretty disappointed overall, especially if they had to wait a long time for his next book. But because of this campaign, even though I was unimpressed, I know that in just another 3 months, there's another secret project coming that is hopefully better, and I could basically just forget about this one. My arbitrary and subjective grade for the Frugal Wizard's Handbook for Surviving Medieval England is 4 out of 10, and a 1 out of 10 for that title. Do with that what you will. I'm very curious what your thoughts are on this book, so please leave a comment and let me know. Thank you for spending some time with me today, but now it's time to get back to reading.